Hello, and welcome to Mechanical Why. Here's a question that is often scoffed at in proper scientific circles. Do ghosts exist? The natural reaction of many academics would be immediately to say that they do not. There has been insufficient hard evidence to prove such a thing, and ghosts surely fall into the realm of fantasy. Ghost hunters are merely walking around old places, jumping at shadows and shouting at walls. But let's do a thought experiment, with a properly open, inquisitive, scientific mind. Let's assume that all humans were always blind, that we have evolved up until this point without eyes or the sense of sight. How would we know that the moon exists? Well, first we can quickly establish that the sun exists. We could feel cycles of warmth and cold on our skin, and we know that it generally comes from above. We can correlate this to weather patterns and so on without the need for sight. So we know that there is something up there that behaves periodically. And eventually we can mathematically model this periodic behavior. And thus we have effectively discovered our sun without ever having to see it. Next, those of us living near a large body of water may identify tides, the periodic rise and fall of water levels due to the influence of a heavenly body's gravity. But when we go to mathematically model tides, we notice that it is somewhat related to our periodic observations of the sun, but it doesn't quite line up. Therefore, we can eventually make the assumption that there is another thing up there behaving periodically. It is like the sun, but cold. And after many years, decades, and perhaps even centuries of data and observations across the entire globe, and with a couple of leaps of creative thinking, we may even be able to establish the relative sizes and orbits of these two heavenly bodies, the sun and the moon. So far, none of this requires vision. In fact, a similar process is being applied to identify Planet X, a thus far undiscovered planet in the far reaches of our solar system. We have identified irregularities in the orbits of known planets, and we calculated that there must be something out there, even though we can't see it, causing these irregularities. So much like a blind race would discover the moon, we are discovering Planet X. Okay, so we can establish that we have a sun and a moon without vision. But what about the other planets? Their influence on our Earth is very small and extremely difficult to measure without sight. And some of their periods far exceed that of an individual human lifetime. So even if we could detect some phenomenon, it may take generations to nail down properties and model their behavior. But let's move out further. What about stars? How do we know that other stars exist without sight? What about the Andromeda Galaxy, our nearest galactic neighbor? What about the rest of the universe? A universe that we have been able to observe solely because we evolved two little organs capable of sensing it. And these initial observations drive us to enhance our ability to sense the rest of the universe with improved telescopes and other technology. What wonders could we have missed without the ability to see them? Now let's apply this logic to ghosts. Some type of phenomenon, ghosts or otherwise, is being observed by ghost hunters and other people. We have some observations in the form of anecdotal evidence, and we have other evidence in the form of images and audio recordings. But scientists generally find this evidence lacking. But what if we are observing ghosts like a blind species would observe the moon and the stars? We get tidbits of data here and there, but it's hard to come up with consistent scientific observations, simply because we do not know how to observe the phenomenon of ghosts and are merely observing some ancillary artifact. Or we simply can't understand the data that we are gathering, like the first blind human sensing a rising tide before the pattern has been established. Imagine explaining the existence of bacteria or electrons to humans, two things that we know for a fact exist. They can observe being sick, and they can observe lightning, but they may not understand what they are observing and won't understand for tens of thousands of years. That is why I believe investigations of ghosts and other fantastical phenomena ought to still be performed scientifically. And a true scientist must always accept the possibility of such phenomena existing, until the null hypothesis is proven, however. But, and there is a big but, how much such research ought to be funded, or how much time and resources ought to be spent on it, is completely up for debate. I personally find the subject interesting, but I will devote my career of research and resources into other fields. Furthermore, the burden of proof lies on the ghost hunters. The scientific community is always free to say, maybe, but we are still unconvinced of your evidence. That is until overwhelming and testable evidence is gathered. And we leave it up to the ghost hunters to gather such evidence. Well, thank you for watching. I hope you found this interesting. If you did, please like and share this video, and please subscribe to stay up to date on new content. Also, please visit us at our website, www.mechanical-y.com.